I share the links to the recordings in the slide presentation that I've just shared with you that I'm presenting, which is also in the classroom and which is going to be the conducting thread for the course, right? So there's going to be material in the classroom, but the slides are going to have links to all the material, to all the tasks. So if you like, the slides are going to serve as a kind of index of the course. So everything we do will end up there. When you have a doubt about what we did, what we are going to do, what you have to do for the following class, whatever, you go to the slides, okay? As I said, some people are already in the slides. I can see that because they're anonymous at the moment because I've shared them openly. Because I wasn't sure which addresses you were using, but you can access them from the classroom, or you can access the slides with the link that I am going to, hang on, because the first class is great fun because everybody joins for the first time, so I have to admit them. Hi, Mariano, I think. So let me, as I speak, hang on a second. Yes, here. I was going to share with you the link to the slides in the chat if anybody wants to go through it like that. Okay, cool. If you have any pressing questions while I'm speaking, if I'm speaking too fast, if whatever, you let me know. You write in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat. Or if you need to, you keep your questions, you ask me later, whatever. Okay, you know the rule. You're in second year, you've done this a million times. You've survived last year, so you're strong survivors, right? Okay, well, let's see how we're going to work in Grammar 2, given all that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to go through the resources to the course. Okay, and this is the list of things that we're going to be using during the course. And I'm going to talk about each one of them in particular, so don't worry, don't panic. Yeah, I'm going to describe each one of them and how we're going to be using them and for what purpose, okay? But I want you to be familiar with the things that we're going to be using during the course first and foremost. Okay, so that's just the list. Let's take each one in turn. The first one is a WhatsApp group. We're not going to be doing classes on WhatsApp, but we're going to use WhatsApp as a backup in case anything happens. Yesterday, for example, I was teaching a class at 8:30 in the morning. And when I went to my computer at 8 in the morning, I saw a blue screen of death. I don't know if you've ever seen that blue screen on your computer. It's not nice. My computer had updated and reinitiated, and I couldn't access anything. So it was a moment of panic. If anything like that happens, it won't happen on your first class because we're all here, but that's the time when we use the WhatsApp. So we don't use it to chat. We don't use it, I don't know, to send recommendations on where to buy the best, I don't know, strawberries or whatever. We use it purely for emergencies, right? Yeah, so I've put the link in the chat to the Meet, and you've got the link in the slides. With that link, you'll be able to join the chat, the WhatsApp group. And once most people have joined, you can send a little message saying who you are so that people can store your names in their address books so they know who's who. This is important because, I mean, you can send, you probably know each other from other classes or whatever, but when you have to organize groups or whatever, you may want to use this for other purposes within the class, okay? So that's the purpose of the WhatsApp group that we'll be using. Okay, no problem with that. That's easy, simple. You have probably too many WhatsApp groups, you know how they work. But this one will be a quiet one, don't worry, okay? Right, So now we have 19 people here. We're going to do our first little activity of the day. This class, as I said, involves you participating and being interactive. So you're going to be doing stuff, and that starts right now. What I'm going to be asking you about first is about your experience. Okay, wrong link. Sorry. Okay, that's the first mistake. Just give me a second because I pasted the wrong link in. While I find the right link, what I want you to think about is what your experience was like last year. Okay, this is what I want to collect from you. What your expectations were, what your experience was, what things worked, what things didn't work, what things proved challenging, what things proved useful. Okay, just give me a sec and I'll find the place where you can write these things. In the meantime, you can join the WhatsApp group so that you can have something to do while I look for this link. Just give me a sec. Here we go. Right. Okay. Jolly good. So in the chat, I'm pasting the link and I'm going to change it in the slides so that you have it correctly. So what I want you to do is, with the things you have just thought about, go to this document and write. You can see the document. This is the wrong one because that was the wrong link. This is not it either. Yep. Here we go. Here we are. Okay. So it's a simple kind of Word type document. And I see some people are already there. So you can see that I've put a table in. And the idea is that you should list the things that you think worked well last year in whatever subject, okay? It doesn't have to be grammar. It doesn't have to be, it can be subject specific. It can be generic. What things didn't work well so that we don't repeat them. And what your expectations are for 2021. And if there's anything else you would like to add. As you can see from the little icons here, you're all anonymous animals, according to Google Docs. So there's an anonymous goose, there's an anonymous dinosaur, there's an anonymous moose. So basically that means you can write freely. You don't need to be constrained about being identified. Okay, so I'm waiting to read the interesting things you write. There you go. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write some comments that you can reply to if you want. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Cristina, I see that uh, uh, the students are writing a lot. Can I vote, for example, because I agree with many comments? So maybe I could write an X
Okay.
next to
Okay.
the,
Okay. Let's try that. This
so
is not
we
a
can see what.
voting app, but yeah, try. Try.
No, maybe
Maybe you can
so we
write a
can see
comment.
what are the what.
You can write it as a
Okay.
comment so that we can differentiate it from, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I agree because
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that maybe that would help to know what are the worst and the
Sure,
best.
sure. I agree. Within
You
each
think?
one. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, go write
Okay.
it. You can write it as a comment, or you can because otherwise, I agree, it won't be clear who's saying it. You see?
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh. Okay. We'll go over this in a minute. I'm just giving you time to do it because I think it's interesting that you have so many ideas. Um, okay. 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 Right. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, somebody joining us. There we go. Good. Not sure who just joined us, but we're doing task where we're writing about our experience last year. You can go to this link in the chat um, to add your ideas. Okay. Okay, okay. very good point. Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Fabulous. Keep writing. Um, okay. Somebody's writing on the phone and things are coming out a bit weird. Clear directions and better communication to survive. Yes, of course we will. Okay, fabulous. I'd like you to go on adding ideas as you know we talk, and later on if you want as well, because this is very useful for me to plan the activities for the year. I'll tell you a bit what my experience was last year. First of all, I agree with many of the things you say. I think that regular meetings are important. I think that we last year we didn't miss a single class. We had every single class from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. One thing that students told me was that 2 hours of screen time was a bit much. We did break them up with breakout rooms, for example, so that they could work in smaller groups, which made it a bit easier. But perhaps one of the things that they suggested at the end of the year, because I do feedback forms, is that perhaps we could take the last half hour of the class to do an activity individually off the screen, and then we could talk about it the following class, for example, right? So that alleviates a little bit the screen time, because sometimes people would finish the class and then go straight into teaching a class, and they wouldn't have time to do anything in between. So I take that on board, and we'll try to organize. My other side of the experience was that, as I say, we taught every class. Not a single class was cancelled for anything external, for any reason. But sometimes classes are cancelled for external reasons, like there's a strike, or people can't make it because there's transportation problems, or people get sick. We had a student, which was a bit worrying, in June, who had COVID at the time when nobody had it. And that was a bit scary because she had to go into a hotel with her family because her father's a doctor, and they just caught it very early. And at that time, nobody knew how it went. But other than that, people on the whole, I don't know what your experience is. I normally get 2 or 3 colds a year. Last year, I didn't get a single cold, because I spent the year at home, right? And so in that sense, attendance was much better than in any previous year because people were always in the classes. It was fabulous, especially the first half of the year when everybody was at home without being able to go out, right? We don't want that to come back, but still, the experience was that attendance was very good. Participation was very high. I don't know if because they had every class in this course and the progress of the class went smoothly, but it just, and I was able to teach, I calculate about 30% more of what I normally teach, because we just took advantage of the time in a completely different way. Excuse me. The other thing that was fabulous, I thought, was that we could use audiovisual resources that we can't normally use in the classroom. I used to use slides like the one I'm showing you in the face-to-face classes. I would create the slide, send the link to the students, and the students would use their phones to look at the slides in class. But we couldn't watch a video. We couldn't listen to a podcast. We couldn't do a lot of things because the material resources weren't there. with this, we've been able to do all that quite easily. We've been able to do a lot of, I used a lot of videos and a lot of quizzes that students did after watching the videos, just very short things, half-hour videos, and then people would watch, not during the class, right? They would watch, and this is what I want to do towards, the end of the class, so that people watch it and then they do the little quiz, and they really enjoyed them. At least that's what they said. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. The idea is to try some of these things and take advantage of the possibilities. Of course, interaction is not exactly the same. Of course, there's a lag when I ask a question and people try to answer, and I've learned that I have to count to 10 before I think that nobody's going to answer, because sometimes people are trying to answer and they have to unmute themselves and they have to, and it's different. Okay, we know that. It's not perfect, but there are some very positive things that have come out of it that I think we need to take advantage of. And it's what we have at the moment. So, there's no point complaining about what we don't have. The point is taking advantage of what we have. Okay? So, having said all that, I agree with many of the things that you wrote, and I wrote it in the margin. So if there's anything that comes to mind later on, let me know, and I will take those ideas and I will incorporate them in what we do. Let me go back to the presentation. Anybody wants to add anything to that? Any pressing concerns or issues, or we're all happy? Are you all teaching on this mode? Are you teaching, first of all? Do some of you teach? Some of you teach. And
I am teaching.
Right. This year is different, right? Because some people are teaching face-to-face. Perhaps.
Yes, I am teaching face-to-face.
Yeah.
Right. So that's adding complications, right? Because you're having to go to places and we'll see how things go. You let me know. I mean, when things change, when your reality changes, if you need to make any adjustments, we will try and help you out, because I know that things are changing for everybody, and now when somebody gets COVID, at least it's not as scary as it was in June last year when this student texted me and said that she'd caught it and she was going into a hotel with her family. I was like, oh God. And she was fine. She was asymptomatic. And now we know so many other people who have recovered that, we know it can be very scary, but it doesn't have to be, right? But still, if there's anything like that happens, I know that health issues are private issues, but in this context, I don't want any of you thinking that you have to come to class if you're sick or anything like that, because there have been cases like that with students, because they're at home, they make the effort. If you feel that you can't, you don't, and it's fine. Okay? Right. Righty-ho. Somebody else has joined and more people are joining, and we're getting close to we're up to 20 now. Right. Let's keep going with things, and then we'll see what else we need to say about this. Okay, so this was your learning experience. Looking forward to 2021. As you can see, we'll be this is the wrong time. Oh, and the wrong meet. Oh, okay, ignore that. I need to change that. Sorry. Okay, the computer is playing up things, but anyway, the Google Meet is the class meeting place. We'll be meeting every week here. It's not Zoom, so it doesn't cut off every time. The meeting time is Tuesdays at 9:45. And as I said, last year, the class officially goes all the way to 11:45. But last year, students suggested, and I think it's a good idea, to have the last half hour maybe devoted to some activity that you do independently, so we can finish a little earlier and so that you can get on with the rest of the things that you have to do. The rules, somebody mentioned, keeping your microphone muted. I know it's kind of a pain, but it's much more of a pain for, the rest of the people in the class. If somebody gets up to go to the bathroom and we have to hear everything that's happening in the house, the dog barking or whatever, right? There was a class a colleague was teaching a couple of weeks ago when somebody was in the class and in the background there was a scream of fire. And so he got up and he went to put out the fire. Literally, there was a fire in his house. Okay, but the rest of the class was very distressed. In the end, it turned out it was just a small thing in the kitchen, but they could hear the noise. They couldn't see what was happening. It was, that's an extreme case, but people ringing the door and delivering stuff and, the whole class having to listen to that conversation, it's just not on. So the best thing is to keep mics muted. You turn them on when you need to speak. We'll take turns. We'll organize that properly so that we don't speak over each other. And you can always use the chat, to write what you want to say if you need to. I like seeing faces, and it's nice to get the feedback from the nodding or the what's she talking about or whatever. So if you can keep your cameras on, it's nice. I know that sometimes people can't. I know that there may be people around them, and I know that, so that's fine as well. I'm not going to make you turn your camera on, but if you can, it's helpful to me. And I'm very visual, so I remember faces. So, I may not remember your pet in your profile picture, but if I have a living, moving face, I will remember who you are. Like in the classroom, I used to remember where you used to sit, right? It was very helpful for people to sit in the same places. I'm very bad with names. It takes me a while to remember. Now I see the names, so that helps me, right? Because I see the faces with the names. But memory works in funny ways. So if I can see your face, it's better than if I have to see a T or an S or whatever, right? Anyway, cool. That's Meet. So no Zoom here. Zoom has advantages, and maybe some of you have to teach on Zoom, and, it has some benefits. Meet has other benefits, including, we can keep the recordings. We can, so, it's a choice. It's what it is. And one of the advantages is that it connects in a way, because it's part of the Google for Education suite. It connects to Google Classroom. And probably many of you have used Google Classroom as students. Last year you used it. You're using it maybe as teachers. It's basically a place where we can do a number of things. There's the stream where we can exchange messages, okay? Here's somebody who sent me a message and I didn't reply to him, but I should. And then there's the classwork, where your classwork appears. At the moment, you've got course slides and the class log, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But there will be other sections and other materials that will appear as the course progresses. And then you've got people, the people in the course. Some people haven't accepted the invitation yet. They should, but most of you have. And then I've got marks. And the marks are the place where I check your progress. Many of the activities I require you to do are not necessarily marked. When we started last year, we didn't know if we could give marks, if you would have to, sit for exams at the end of the year. As it turned out, students didn't, and they could, pass the subject with the work they had done. You'll see that I will give you a lot of small tasks. many of which are to check your understanding of what you've seen or you've done or something. I don't necessarily mark those, but I want them to be done, because if you don't, I don't know if you have actually done the task, and it's important for me to see that you've done it. So that's what I will look for in that section in particular. There will be different forms of evaluation, because ultimately I have to give you a mark. But I'm more interested in you following the progress of the course with those small tasks. And it's more manageable for you as well. It's not, one big thing. Okay. So that's what I will be looking for in the classroom. But it will be quite self-explanatory. You'll see. It'll be fine. Not to worry. Right. So that's classroom. Right. The next thing, which we won't do right now, you can do it afterwards when we finish with the explanations, is a personal data form. It's not so much your favorite color or your horoscope, not that kind of personal data, but it's personal data in terms of contact details, so that I have them all together. And it's personal data in terms of who you took previous classes with, so that I know what to expect in terms of what you did. Okay. So if you feel there's anything you need to add there, you can. It's just a file to have a general record of the whole class. Okay. You can do this later through the link. Right. Then there's a couple of resources that I've been using, online resources for, I don't know, some 10 years before the pandemic. So this is quite lucky, because I had a lot of my material online already. This is a site that I created, I think about 10 years ago, that has a number of different things, like, I don't know, humor, for example, humor related to language, for example, or global English. It's a section in particular about global English, or another section on videos, different videos. I mean, I could update the format, because this is not particularly, this is what shows that it's a bit old in the way it was compiled. But anyway, it's a resource. It's a way where it's a place where you can go for material, and that you can consult like you would a kind of mini. This is not a library. I also have a library. There's the linguistics library. A linguistics library is a folder on Drive. Okay. Yes, this is it. That takes you to a Drive folder with a large number of books. We're not going to be reading all these books, don't panic. But it's a library. It's like, if you go into a library, I suppose you have gone into libraries, you can find a lot of different things. And the idea is that you can consult this library when you need to look up something. Okay, it's a digital library, which has the advantages and the disadvantages of a digital library. You don't look at the physical books, although in some libraries you can't look at the physical books either. You look at a catalog, but it's a resource. Okay, it's a resource, and you can have access to this even after you've finished the course, and you can use it for other courses if you need to. Okay, I don't know. The Handbook of Changing World Language Map, for example. The Handbook of Sociolinguistics Around the World. There are things that we won't be using for this course in particular, as I say, right? But that you may, how languages are learned, how the mind works, lots of different things. A library. There's no mystery to it, but it's been compiled over many years with the contributions of students, so that's quite good as well. Somebody was talking about the course, that the contents and what to expect and what not to expect. Let me remove this. This is where you find is. This is the formal document where this is. This is the syllabus. Okay. Where you find the formal, the contents, the work methodology, the evaluation, which is now disrupted or different, some bibliography, and yeah, the syllabus. Okay, I'm sure you've seen them for other courses. Yeah? Okay, the syllabus. Okay, and finally, this is something that I've been using, which you may not be familiar with, but I've been using it for the last few years, and it's quite useful to me. I'll tell you what it is. It's called a class log. A log is something that I think that the origins of the idea of a log was on ships. People who traveled on ships, they would write down, a date and the things that happened during that date, because otherwise people would forget. So a log is a record of what happens in a certain context. A log is also a piece of wood, but that's another meaning of log. This is something we'll be seeing in grammar too, which is polysemy, one word that means two different things, right? You've heard of polysemy, maybe? Okay, well, you will in this course. Cool. Okay, yes, I like the thumbs up. I like seeing the nodding, the smiling, the thumbs up. It's very helpful. Anyway, so what's a class log? My idea with the class log is that just as in a face-to-face class, you could sit in the back of the classroom and think about, I don't know, your weekend, your holidays, the shopping you were going to do later in the day, and not think about the class, and be present in body, but not in mind. Obviously, you can do this online. Now, some people are very worried about the fact that online people do this more than they did in the class. I have a suspicion that the same people who did it in face-to-face do it online. And it doesn't change much, right? The people who pay attention face-to-face or online, and the ones who don't. I'm not interested in you being present physically, This is why I'm saying that if you need to have your camera off because of whatever, that's fine. But I want you to be present in the paying attention sense of things. So what's my way of checking this? Checking, but also exchanging what it is that you found interesting or helpful or useful about the class. What I will ask you to do is after each class, take 5 minutes, and it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes, to fill out the class log. The class log is this form you're seeing, which compiles your email address. It should do it automatically. I'll change that. Where you need to write what the topic of the class was, what you perceived the topic of the class being, which may be different in different places, okay? 3 things that you understood, and 3 things that you're not clear or would like to know more about. Just that, okay? Sometimes it may be 4 things. Sometimes it may be 2 things. I'm not going to be counting like that, okay? But what I want you to is to take those 5 minutes of thinking, okay, what did I learn in this class? What new things, what things that challenged what I already knew? What things that were, strange or unusual or surprising or whatever? And what things would I like to know something more about? What things were mentioned that I didn't understand very well and I would like to know more about? After a few classes, what I do is I check that I open the answers so you can see each other's answers, and I make comments to your answers. So if you say, oh, when you mentioned this thing about neurolinguistics, I didn't understand very well, maybe I add a link or something where you can go and read some more about that thing. Okay? Those extra comments may go beyond the scope of the course. They may be outside the strict, list of contents of the course. But if you're interested in something, I'm going to give you that something to go and read it. I'm not going to test you on it because it's not strictly part of the course. But I want you to be interested in the things we talk about, right? I don't just want you to repeat or memorize or whatever the things that are said. Okay? That cool? Okay, more thumbs up. Yes, fabulous. Okay. Something that is not included in the slides, but that I think is important for you to remember when I was talking about me talking and you talking. As I said, I expect participation that may be in the form of what you wrote today rather than speaking, because sometimes speaking all at once is complicated, but there will be more speaking. And in the second part of the year, I will expect you to do some presentations when you're a bit more confident and you're a bit more sure about what you're doing, so that I get to hear, we'll do smaller interventions during the term, but towards the second part of the term, in small groups, you'll take a topic and you'll do a presentation on that topic. I'll tell you all about that later on. There's no hurry, but what I want you to know from now on is that I want you to take a more of a protagonist role as the course progresses, right? So more, over to you, and I want to hear you rather than hear myself. Yeah? Cool? Fine. Lovely. All right. So let's move on to a bit of participation. Jamboard. Have you used Jamboard before? Yes, some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay, Jamboard is a kind of whiteboard. Okay, some people are already there. That's good. I'll put the link in the chat. I know some of you are on phones and this may be a bit more challenging. Yesterday, because of my blue screen of death, I had to go to my phone, which was the first time I taught a class in a phone, and it was distressing. But anyway, we're not comfortable with change. Anyway, I put the link in the chat, and many of you are already there. And the idea of this is that I want you to, as this says, use this space to jot down ideas you have or have looked up about what grammar is. Okay, so this is the little task that I will ask you to do over the next few minutes. Okay. Again, you're still anonymous, so don't feel inhibited. You've already taken a grammar course, so you've got some ideas about what grammar is. Jot down ideas. It's like brainstorming, okay? Yeah? Does everybody know what they have to do? Not necessarily what they're going to write, but you know what you have to do, right? I'm going to give you, it's now 10:36. I'm going to give you till 10:45. Yeah? I'm going to turn my camera off just so that you don't have my presence here. And I'll come back at 10:45 and we'll see what you wrote. Is that okay? Any questions? More thumbs up, more nodding. Cool. I'll be back. Okay. See lots of interesting ideas in the Jamboard. In the meantime, I took things out of the oven. These are the advantages and disadvantages of being at home. Because if you don't take things out of the oven, they burn. Okay. So let's have a look. Right. The structure of a language. Okay. So when we say, for example, English grammar, it's the structure of English. Okay. A language has structure in many different aspects of it, right? Because a language is primarily spoken, for example. So there's structure in sounds, as you've learned in phonetics, right? So that is also structure, and it's also language, but it's not necessarily grammar, right? So it is in a way to do with the structure of language, but perhaps we need to refine that definition a little bit more. Breaking language into pieces, I like that. Cutting up the cake into smaller portions. Yes, that seems to be what we tried to do with grammar, in a similar sense to how biology or physics breaks particles into smaller particles, right? So there's atoms, there's the electrons and the protons and the bits inside the atoms, and we're all made up of those things, right? And we're trying to find what are those essential bits that make up those bigger units, okay? And what are those things that we all have in common, right? Because we're all made up of atoms. We're all made up of genes. We're all made up of those are abstract things. When you see a person, you don't see atoms. You don't see genes, right? But we know they're there because we've studied them in a way, and we look for some more abstract commonalities that are not immediately apparent when we see the person, right? You'll notice that I'm going to make a lot of parallelisms with science, right? And some of you are going to go, oh, I study English because I hate mathematics and physics and whatever. First of all, don't hate. As a general thing, don't hate people, don't hate subjects, don't hate whatever. It's a way of approaching the study of language, right? Which is basically scientific, not in the sense that you're going to wear a white lab coat and use test tubes, but in the sense that we're looking for a deeper understanding beyond what we immediately see. And you need to have that because although you're going to be teaching the verb to be, you already know what the verb to be is, right? You already use the verb to be. And in spite of that, you're still studying. You're studying because you want to know more than what you already know. And you want to gain a deeper understanding so that you can explain things to your students in a more supported way, okay? Right. Rules of a language. Rules are an important part of it. Yes, rules are an important part, but no rules in the sense of don't eat with your fingers rules. Not rules that are arbitrary in the sense of customs, right? In some communities or in some countries or in some contexts, you should eat with your fingers, right? Does anybody eat a hamburger with knife and fork? Probably not. You eat that with your fingers, right? A banana, you eat it with your fingers, right? So depending on the content, those are not rules of nature. If I drop this, there, you can see it, it will fall, right? Because of gravity. That's a rule of nature. What we're trying to discover is rules that are more like gravity than manners, right? The way things work, not because of polite society, but because language is essentially a part of nature. We are all, none of us are born speaking a language, right? but we all end up speaking a language, except for pathological cases, which are a minority, right? And in fact, we all end up speaking one language, not necessarily two, as in your case, right? That's more exceptional. But everybody speaks one language and follows the same pattern in that acquisition of that language. That's quite fabulous, right? Everybody in the world, in history, has done that. How come? Well, in a similar way as how you learn to walk. You didn't learn to walk because you were taught to walk. You learned to walk because it was part of your development. Like fish learn to swim, like bears learn to hibernate in the winter. Not because Mummy Bear tells them, okay, now we're going to go to sleep for several months because this is good for us. That doesn't happen like that. It's nature that makes them do that. Well, it's nature that makes us acquire language. Of course, we acquired Spanish because we grew up surrounded by Spanish. If we'd grown up surrounded by Chinese, we would have learned Chinese, right? And there are differences, as we clearly know, between the different languages, but there are more similarities in spite of what we think. And we'll look into that. And so there are some rules of language that are language specific, and there are some rules of language that are generic to all languages. Okay? Even in the grammar, we'll see if we abstract things away enough. Think about, again, different people around the world. When we meet somebody, we notice the differences. They have straight hair, curly hair, red hair, blonde hair, but they all have hair. Well, some people don't, but they did at some point, right? Because they're people. It's unusual to have people who have wings, right? Or feathers instead of hair. You wouldn't have that because they wouldn't be people. They'd be birds, right? So those are the commonalities that we look for and that we're interested in, because we also are trying to find the things that we need to rely on with respect to our students that they already know about language, to teach them the ones they don't know because it's English. Okay? Right, grammar is something we use to decide, depending on where in the clause, sentence a word is, it acts with other words and what characteristics the word will have. Okay, that's a bit of a messed up grammatical sentence. But basically, grammar tells us what's right and what's wrong. We can have grammatical and ungrammatical statements. And in fact, in our own language, we have an intuition about what's grammatical and what is ungrammatical, even independently of grammar books. If I tell you, gato el sentado silla la, y no está bien, ¿no? Claramente. You don't need a grammar book to realize that that's wrong, even though all the ingredients of the sentence, el gato está sentado en la silla, bueno, me faltaba en, it's very difficult to produce an ungrammatical sentence, as you can see, ungrammatical to that point. Now, there are different types of grammatical rules in that sense that you may have come across this contrast. Prescriptive versus descriptive rules. You're familiar with this notion? No? Okay. That's important. I am going to put it in the Jamboard. Interestingly, okay, yeah, I'm gonna here we go. Prescriptive versus descriptive rules. Wait a minute. Prescriptive. You should check whenever I write things as I'm speaking, because it's difficult to write and speak at the same time. Like when I write on the blackboard, I'm usually so close to it that I don't see it. So sometimes I make mistakes. Anyway, difference between prescriptive and descriptive rules. I'll give you a couple of prescriptive rules of English. Thou, okay, let me write it here. Thou shall Not split an infinitive. Have you ever heard of this rule? Thou shalt not split an infinitive. What is to split an infinitive? No, never heard of it? Okay, good. To boldly go where nobody else has been. I think that's the quote from, I think, Star Trek, is it? To boldly go where no one else has been, or something like that. That's a split infinitive. To and go together, right? You're used to seeing to and go together in a full infinitive. And here you have an adverb in between to and go. This is supposed to be very bad form. This is equivalent to pienso de qué. ¿Ven? Ahí se me sonríen, esa la reconocen, ¿no? Pienso de qué. Les voy a dar otro ejemplo. The thing is, you don't have the same reaction about pienso de qué as to boldly go, because English is not your native language. When I say pienso de qué, you associate it with the people who say pienso de qué, and you go, ooh, I wouldn't say that. A ver, ¿quién dice? ¿Voy de mi abuela o voy a lo de mi abuela? ¿Qué dicen ustedes?
Voy a lo de mi abuela. My mother does that.
A lo de mi abuela.
My mother does that. It's a very
My mother's
naughty
like,
girl.
de tu papá, de tu tía. What?
What?
What's going on with you?
Horror. What's going on with her? What do you think is going on with her, Paula?
Nah, she's just, you know, as a matter of fact, she's a speech therapist. That's why she does that kind of thing. She has the license to do that with us because she knows that I am an English teacher. My sister is an English teacher, so it's like she does it
to annoy you, like all mothers do. Yes, mothers, we're there to do that. A ver, otra. ¿Vino Paula o vino la Paula? Mira cómo se ríe.
La Paula.
La Paula.
La Paula es. Sí.
La Paula. Bueno, depende. A ver.
Depends on the geographical, you know, the dialect.
Okay. Well, it depends on a number of factors. It may be geography. It may be social class. It may be age. It may be generation. All those factors influence the way we speak. Arre. ¿Se acuerdan de arre? Y todos se ríen. Yo lo que
¿Cómo se acuerdan?
¿Cómo se acuerdan? No está, me parece que ya no se usa más.
I still use it.
Sigue vigente, sí.
You still use it because you're past that generation. You're not a teenager anymore. But it was a teenager thing. I'm sorry, you've aged. It happens to the best of us. No se rían, es así. ¿Quién sabe lo que es un tincho? Tincho. Todos levantan la mano. Bueno, ¿cuándo se enteraron que era un tincho? ¿Hace un par de años? ¿O hace mucho? Yo no hace mucho. Yo lo que tardé en entender lo que era un tincho y las milipilis, con mis hijos explicándome qué era un tincho y las milipilis, y con lo que les costaba explicarlo. Me decían, no, porque fulano es un tincho. Ok, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué? Por cómo se peina, por cómo se viste, por cómo habla, por con quién anda. Bueno, all those factors contribute to that definition. Yes, Aileen, you were going to say something.
No, just that teenagers now, they don't even know how to explain us the new terms, because my brothers-in-law, they are teenagers, and so I asked them, so what is the ruta? And they say it's like, and they don't know.
It doesn't matter. They do know because they use it, and they know when to use it, and you don't. And you don't because you're a different generation, even if it's a small number of years difference. The thing is, we shouldn't get cross with this. We shouldn't get offended by it. It does touch, well, hablemos de lenguaje inclusivo. A ver, Ahí se arma todo el despiporre. Being a grammar teacher, being a linguist, I get the question all the time. ¿Vos qué pensás del lenguaje inclusivo? Y no, nada, no pienso mucho del lenguaje inclusivo. Pienso que es, for certain people, it works. For other people, it doesn't. And it will or won't survive depending on the influence of those people, depending on how far it stretches. But this has happened throughout history. What happens with lenguaje inclusivo in particular, and the same thing happens in English, by the way, with the use of pronouns, yeah, with people not wanting people to refer to them as she or he, but as they or their or whatever. There's a similar movement there. This has happened throughout history. Language changes. We don't speak the way Shakespeare spoke or the way Cervantes spoke, which is why it's so difficult to read those authors, right? But even when they wrote, they didn't speak the way everybody else spoke, because people speak the way people who are like them speak. And the way your brothers-in-law, Aileen, the reason they use those terms is because they want to be different from you. They want to have their own language. They dress differently, they look different, because we're all the time trying to differentiate ourselves and to find our identity, particularly when we're teenagers, and particularly adolescents are very productive in inventing these terms because they express their identity through them. And you're going to be teaching teenagers. And it's something you have to go with. It's something you have to understand. You have to understand how this process works. And you mustn't get cross with it, because it's reality. It's part of you have to guide them, though. It doesn't mean you have to, pretend it doesn't happen, or you have to expect them to speak like you, because they won't. But you have to guide them in understanding where they should speak how, and which elements mark them in different ways, because then they can make choices. That's what education is about. It's about helping people to make choices. It's not about getting them to be like you. It's about guiding them in the options they have to make decisions. And I know it sounds like I'm talking about, abstract educational ideas, but it refers to language in particular. We make choices when we speak English too. Why do we sound the way we sound? Why do you learn? You probably told you speak RP, or you were modeling on RP when you did your, why? Why RP? Ah, big question, isn't it? I had a phonetics 1 teacher when in profesorado, last century, a century ago probably, who used to say, Argentines learn English to communicate with Americans, but no Argentine mother would want her children speaking American English. What does that say about Argentines, right? I'll repeat that. Argentines learn English to communicate with Americans, but no Argentine mother would want her children speaking American English.
Ridiculous.
Well, ridiculous, but it reflected a perception that people had, right? And maybe still have. I mean, people, I spoke to an editor of OUP books in New York who said she couldn't sell her English file American version in Argentina because teachers don't buy it. They buy the British version. The rest of Latin America buys the American version of English file. Argentina buys the British version. Of course, these are not decisions you make, because when you go to the bookshop, you only find the British version, but you're already part of it. You're already part of that system. So you should reflect on it. Do you say trousers or pants? Do you say sidewalk or pavement? And are those decisions so clear-cut? Do you say either or either? And I can show you British passport carriers who say either. you've been taught either is British, either is American, but yeah, not quite.
Potato,
potato, tomato, tomato, and whatever, right? We always make choices. We make choices in our first language, and we make choices in our second language, and we make choices when we teach a second language. And we make choices. Do you say, do you have or have you got? Do you have a pencil or have you got a pencil?
Have you got?
Why? Well, and that's something you probably teach in Unit 1 of
Absolutely.
Year 1. Okay, so you're already transmitting things with that choice. And then the students come up to you and they say, oh, but I saw friends and they said to you, they said the other one that you didn't say. Do you have? But is it right? Is it wrong? And what do I say? And then there are people who say, you know, we should teach all the varieties for comprehension. And well, we can debate about that a long time. But anyway.
But it's because language, I mean, because language is live. I mean, we construct
Absolutely.
language as a society in general.
Absolutely.
So that's why it changes so much.
Absolutely. It changes so much and it changes all the time. But at the same time, there's a common core that allows us to switch on CNN or BBC or Al Jazeera or whatever, or the Russian English language channel, and be able to understand what they're saying. I mean, there's a benefit to that. Clearly, it's not negative, but it's reality that we have to contend with. And of course, be prepared to be the arm of international imperialism. You're aware that that's how English teachers are seen in places, right? Or also the cool teacher who can teach the kids songs, right? That as well. So, yeah, it's part of who you are. Anyway, enough psychology for now. Grammar is something we use to decide depending on where there's... Oh, okay, we've got this one clarified. All right, cool. The system of a language. Okay, system is a very interesting term. System is different from a collection or group in that when something changes, it affects the other things within it. Okay? And that's something that is very important in language. You're right, language is a system. And when a certain bit of information is absent, then there's somebody somewhere else that bit of information is present. Sometimes people will say, oh, well, English is an easy language to learn because there's no verb conjugations. And you go, yeah, that's why I've been studying it for years. Yeah, right, not easy. Why? Because there's no language that's really so much easier than another. There's proximity. Oh, there's a cat. We always get cats in classes. I like cats in classes. And they like camera. They like cameras and screens. They're always in the way. There's another cat. Eileen has a cat. Anyway, train of thought. Where was I? Yes. There's proximity or distance with your own first language, which makes some things easier or more difficult to learn. So certain languages will be more transparent. So for example, if you hear Italian or Portuguese, you may have familiarity from experience, but there's also transparency in that certain things are the same because they have a common root, historical root, whereas Chinese or Russian or I don't know, Punjabi, you won't be able to understand anything because there's no commonality in that sense. But assuming that for that reason, a language is so much easier or simpler is a dangerous thing to assume because the difficulties usually lie somewhere else. Yes, English may not have as many verb forms as Spanish, but then it has phrasal verbs or prepositional verbs or whatever other bit of the language has that complexity, okay? So similar to the idea of system, language is like a balloon. If you push the air out one way, it comes out the other, but it's always the same amount of air in the balloon because it's always the same amount of things that we're ultimately trying to express. There are some studies, however, that say that languages that are more extended globally are simpler than languages that are more constrained to a particular community. Let me see the chat. There's a message. Am I the only one having connection problems? Macarena, I'm not sure. Possibly. You can always watch the recording.
She left.
Oh, poor thing. Oh, so she wants the messages that I wrote. Okay. She can watch the recording. Anyway, so the question is figuring out which those areas of complexity are and which those areas of difference or similarity. Patterns. Yes. Patterns are things we observe when we see something. We observe that there is a pattern. For example, at the moment, I'm observing that when I see all of you together in my screen, I'll put it in the WhatsApp group since we've got it, so that you can see how I see you. There's a pattern in that the ones who have their phones on are in the same column, right? This is a pattern I'm observing, right? And the ones that appear that have their cameras off are at the bottom, and the ones that came in last are also last in the display that I have. That's a pattern. That's different from a rule. Okay, a pattern is something that has a commonality or that may lead to the discovery of a rule, but it may not. Okay, a pattern is something that we observe in the data, for example. Okay, cool. Functions in communication. Okay. This is actually an area of language study that is not specifically grammar, because functions of communication may differ quite widely with respect to the grammatical patterns used. If I say hi, good morning, hello, all those are greetings. But grammatically, they have different shapes. Grammar is something that's more abstract than that, and that has to do with the rules of the language. Functions can be a bit more, you can request something by asking a question, or even by saying something that sounds like a command, and it can still be a request, depending on how you say it. So functions are very important when you teach, because that's what we want to do with language, right? The functions of language. But the grammatical patterns that we use for the particular function may be different. So they're not one and the same thing. Okay, function, how a word or group of words is used and how they relate. Okay, a set of rules which belong to a specific language, analysis of different structures of language. Okay, how language is structured, structure of language, including syntax. Careful with the spelling. Syntax is one of those weird words that are spelled weirdly because of its origin. So syntax takes a Y. Okay, so that's the spelling of syntax in English. Good grammar provides, well, not always. Good grammar may not necessarily lead to good communication. It can help, but you can use perfectly good grammar and generate miscommunication.
There's a sentence that is like had, and they have like 4 times had, and it still makes sense, but it's really difficult.
It's still grammatical, but it's very difficult to process it. Right. Absolutely. We'll see some examples of that sort of thing. Sentences can have problems at different levels. The problem that you're pointing out, Paula, is what we call parsing. Parsing is what we do in our heads. You know, syntactic analysis that maybe you did in school or you didn't, but you probably did college. Well, we do that to understand sentences. We call it parsing. We make sense. So, for example, if I tell you, I saw the man, oh, wait. Let me give you a different one. Okay, so this sentence, he killed the man with the gun. Yeah? What do you notice about this sentence? You understand
If he killed
it?
the man with the instrument or the man that was holding a gun.
Absolutely. That's an ambiguous sentence, right? Because it has two possible interpretations. In one interpretation, as Gabriela says, the gun was the instrument with which the man was killed. And in the other interpretation, the man killed had the gun, right? Sorry, it's a bit of a violent sentence, but you can also see the man with the binoculars or whatever. But whatever. Now, there's no difference in pronunciation, no difference in intonation. The difference is what structure we assign to those two sentences. Whether one is with the binoculars is part of the object of killing, or whether with the binoculars is the adjunctive instrument. Now, to understand those two sentences, you don't have to know the word adjunct. You don't have to have studied syntax, right? People, ordinary people who can't read or write can interpret those two things. No, yeah, read or write. Yeah, I said it right. They can interpret those two different meanings. You understand? So that means that in our heads, we give those two sentences different structures. We parse them differently because they produce two different meanings. And that's what we're interested in. I'm not interested in the boxes or the trees. We use the boxes or the trees to show on paper how those things happen in the mind. But it's like, I don't know, you did chemistry in school, right? You had to draw the little diagrams of the chemical elements. Of course, those little diagrams are not chemical elements in the real world. They're just representations of how chemical elements work, right? Before those representations existed, okay? We use them to discuss that reality. Okay, good grammar there, knowledge of communication. Again, communication and language, not the same thing. If I go, I'm communicating, right? If I go, I'm communicating, not using language, okay? So language is part of communication, but we also use language to not communicate, right? You can think a sentence and not communicate it to anybody. So there's an overlap, there's an intersection between language and communication, and you teach language for communication or whatever, but not the same thing exactly. Grammar is organization. I like that. Yeah, well, absolutely. You organize elements in a certain way in order for things to make sense. Very nice. I like this Jamboard very much. So you'll get to keep this for future reference. Now, I'm going to leave you with a task, as I said, for the rest of the session so that you can do this on your own. Let me see where I put it because I had it. Just a sec. It's in your classroom. I'll open the classroom again. There we go. Classroom. So you can see everything in the slides has links, so you can go back and forth when you have doubts, and you'll be able to. It's this one that I want to assign. Topic, create topic, videos, and now we'll assign it. Yeah. So when you go to this assignment in the classroom, what you'll see is a link that will take you to a YouTube video. It's only 20 minutes long. Okay. And you also see a form that has a little quiz, yeah, multiple choice quiz that you can, it's about getting the grammar. Yeah, very simple video. It's very, it's actually intended for secondary school British kids, okay? So it's just an entertaining way of presenting grammatical notions. So the idea is you watch the video and you answer the quiz. And next time we'll go over the answers that you provided to this quiz, okay? So that we all are on the same page. Are there questions before I let you do this?
If we have to leave now for any reason, can we do it during the week, or do we have to do it now?
Absolutely. I'm not going to keep you here. This is what I was telling you about not, limiting the amount of screen time. I'm just explaining what you have to do, and I'm, asking if you have questions so that you know what to do. Okay. Is that clear? Yeah, everybody's clear about it. So this is get the grammar 1. The grammar 1. It's also so that you familiarize yourselves with the, I don't know, have I given you too many things to look at and too many? No, you're okay. So as I said, it's short video. You watch the video, you do the quiz. During the week, I won't look at it until, Monday. So that's that. Whenever you can, you do it. You can do it now if you want to, because you have this time allocated to this, or you can do it later. Yeah? Hunky dory? Everybody happy? Okay, guys.
Cristina,
Sí, Florencia. Yes.
should we do the class log for the first class too?
Well, this was a bit of a broad intro. You can if you want to do it as practice, but there's not that much content that we covered today. But after today, yeah, because we will be covering more content. Yeah? But you can do it as practice if you want to just practice. Any other questions? Any other doubts? It's a beautiful sunny day. People look up to the ceiling. I'm just saying that because last year I kept telling people when we finished the class, go and take 15 minutes of sun because you're all very pale and you need vitamin D. Okay. No, I'm serious. It's I've never sunbathed in my life, but last year I had a tan because I was very conscious of the need for vitamin D. So I would go up or at the balcony or whatever, because it's supposed to be helpful. So if you can, take 15 minutes of fresh air. All right? Cool, guys. Well, lovely meeting you. And next time I'll hear more from you and less from me, okay? Hopefully. And we'll keep progressing like that. Fabulous. See you next Tuesday then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.
Bye. Bye-bye.